My husband remarried my sister when he found out she got the inheritance. This crazy story will make you question everything about love, loyalty, and family ties. What would you do if your husband married your sister? For money? I know it sounds like the stuff of soap operas, but this shocking tale is all too real, and it's going to leave you speechless. Sarah thought she had a perfect life, a loving husband, Jake, who she'd been with for 5 years, and a sister, Emily, who she was incredibly close to. They shared everything from childhood memories to late-night phone calls. But what Sarah didn't know was that these two most important people in her life were keeping a dark secret, one that would tear her entire world apart. Sarah's life was flipped upside down when she discovered that Jake and Emily had done the unthinkable. They got married behind her back. And the reason? A massive inheritance that Jake was eager to claim, a fortune that would set him up for life. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was financial. It was a cold, calculated move that shattered everything Sarah believed about family, trust, and love. It's a story that will have you questioning just how far people are willing to go for money and whether love and loyalty can truly survive in the face of greed. So buckle up, because this story is about to take you on a wild ride through deception, heartbreak, and the dark side of family dynamics. Sarah had always considered herself someone who knew the people around her well. She was a strong, independent woman who trusted her instincts. But nothing could have prepared her for the emotional chaos that hit her when she found out that Jake, her husband, and Emily, her sister, had betrayed her in the worst way imaginable. Jake and Sarah's marriage had its ups and downs, like any relationship, but she always thought they had each other's backs. They had shared dreams, plans for the future, and moments of vulnerability. For 5 years, they built a life together, made promises, and envisioned growing old side by side. But somewhere along the way, things began to shift, and Sarah had no idea what was brewing beneath the surface. Then there was Emily. She and Sarah had always been close, ever since they were kids. Growing up, they were inseparable. Emily was her confidant, her best friend. They had been through everything together, from family vacations to supporting each other through heartbreaks and life changes. Sarah had never doubted Emily's loyalty, not for a second. So, when Sarah learned the truth, the emotional impact was devastating. It wasn't just about the infidelity. This was an outright betrayal by two people she loved most in the world. The sheer disbelief, the sense of betrayal from both her husband and her sister, felt like a punch to the gut. How could the man she loved, the man she trusted, marry her sister? How could Emily, the person she had shared every detail of her life with, go along with this? The real kicker was the reason behind it, the inheritance. Jake and Emily hadn't gotten married out of love or passion. It was a calculated, cold move to secure a massive sum of money. The inheritance had been a point of discussion within the family for years. It was a fortune that could change lives. But for Sarah, it was never about the money. It was about trust and love. And now that very inheritance had become the catalyst for the destruction of her family. As Sarah processed this shocking revelation, the emotional toll was immense. She was left feeling betrayed, isolated, and utterly confused. The emotional and ethical challenges that came with the situation were almost too much to bear. She had to ask herself difficult questions. Could she ever trust again? What did this mean for her relationship with her sister and her husband? And most importantly, how could she possibly move forward after such a devastating betrayal? The family dynamic was forever altered. The once close bond between Sarah and Emily was in shambles. Their relationship, which had been built on years of trust and love, was crumbling under the weight of greed and betrayal. Sarah felt trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from, struggling to understand how things had gone so wrong, so fast. Let's peel back the layers of this twisted tale and dive deeper into the people at the heart of it. Sarah and Jake's relationship wasn't always rocky. In fact, for years, they were the picture of a happy, stable couple. They met in their mid-20s, both ambitious and full of plans for the future. They quickly fell in love, drawn to each other's energy and drive. They traveled together, shared hobbies, and envisioned a long life together. But as time went on, cracks began to show. It started small, little arguments over money, career choices, and family obligations. Sarah noticed that Jake became increasingly focused on financial security. He would often talk about their future, but with a growing emphasis on money, savings, and investments. Sarah didn't think much of it at the time. After all, everyone worries about finances now and then. But looking back, she could see how Jake's obsession with securing a financial future had taken over their relationship. Then there was Emily. Sarah's younger sister had always been someone she looked out for. Emily had a different personality, more carefree, a little more wild than Sarah. She had bounced between jobs and relationships, never quite finding her footing. Sarah always felt like she needed to protect Emily, offer her guidance and support. But somewhere along the way, Emily's admiration for Sarah turned into jealousy. Maybe it was the way Sarah seemed to have it all, a stable marriage, a good job, and a future that Emily hadn't quite managed to secure for herself. The jealousy wasn't obvious at first. Emily was great at hiding it, putting on a supportive front, always there when Sarah needed her. But underneath the surface, Emily was feeling the pressure to prove herself. She wanted to step out of Sarah's shadow and claim something of her own. And then Jake entered the picture. It started with small interactions, Jake and Emily sharing a laugh at family gatherings, exchanging stories, bonding over shared experiences. Sarah never thought much of it. After all, Jake was her husband, and Emily was her sister. Why would she ever think something could happen between them? But slowly, something did start to grow between Jake and Emily, something neither of them fully acknowledged until it was too late. Jake, driven by his desire for financial security, began to see Emily as a way to secure his future. Emily, feeling overshadowed by her sister's success, saw Jake as a way to carve out her own path. It was a toxic combination of greed, insecurity, and betrayal. The inheritance, a fortune that had the power to change their lives, became the focal point of their relationship. And before they knew it, Jake and Emily found themselves caught up in a scheme that would destroy everything they once held dear. The moment of discovery is where everything comes crashing down for Sarah. It's a moment that will forever be etched in her memory, a moment that feels surreal, like the ground is being ripped out from under her feet. One afternoon, as she was tidying up the house, she stumbled across something that made her heart stop. A wedding invitation. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up, her eyes scanning over the beautifully scripted names. Emily and Jake. The world seemed to blur around her as her brain tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Could this really be happening? Was it some kind of cruel joke? The shock was so intense that she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It felt like time had stopped. But it wasn't a joke. It was real. Her husband was marrying her sister. For a split second, Sarah hoped there was some misunderstanding. Maybe it was just an old invitation, something she had forgotten about. But no, the date was right there, clear as day. It was coming up in a matter of weeks. The reality hit her like a ton of bricks. Her husband, the man she had shared 5 years of her life with, had been planning to marry her sister behind her back. And all for money. In a daze, Sarah confronted them. She didn't know what she was going to say or how she was going to handle it, but she knew she couldn't stay silent. When she finally found them, Jake and Emily, sitting together, looking as though nothing was wrong, her emotions exploded. Anger, confusion, betrayal. It all poured out of her in a torrent of words she couldn't control. "How could you?" she demanded, her voice shaking with fury and heartbreak. "How could you do this to me? How could you betray me like this?" The confrontation was raw and brutal. Jake and Emily were caught off guard, and for a moment, they didn't know how to respond. But as Sarah's accusations hit them, the truth came spilling out. Jake tried to justify his actions, explaining that the inheritance was too much to pass up, that it was a decision he made out of necessity, not malice. But how could he expect Sarah to understand that? To her, it was the ultimate betrayal. She had trusted him, loved him, and in return, he had married her sister for money, and Emily, her own sister, had gone along with it. The betrayal cut deeper than anything Sarah could have imagined. The people she had loved most in the world had destroyed her trust and shattered her heart. And for what? For greed. For money? The argument that followed was a whirlwind of emotions, tears, shouting, accusations flying back and forth. Sarah couldn't believe the words coming out of their mouths. Emily, too, tried to justify her actions, saying that she had never meant to hurt Sarah, that things had just happened. But there was no way to make sense of it. There was no way to explain away the fact that they had both betrayed her for personal gain. As the confrontation escalated, Sarah felt her world collapsing around her. The pain was overwhelming, suffocating. She had lost not just her husband but her sister as well. Everything she had built her life around had been ripped away, and she was left standing in the ruins of her broken family. In that moment, Sarah realized that the damage was irreparable. No words, no apologies could fix what had been done. The betrayal was too deep, the trust too shattered. All she could do was walk away, leaving Jake and Emily to deal with the consequences of their actions. In the aftermath of this shocking betrayal, Sarah was left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. The fallout from Jake and Emily's actions rippled through the family, leaving a trail of broken relationships and unresolved emotions in its wake. For Sarah, moving on wasn't easy. The pain of betrayal cut deep, and the scars would last for years. She had to come to terms with the fact that the two people she had loved and trusted most had turned their backs on her for money. It was a hard lesson to learn, but it taught her something valuable about the nature of trust, loyalty, and human greed. In time, Sarah began to rebuild her life, but it was never the same. The relationship between her and Emily was irreparably damaged. The bond they once shared had been destroyed, and there was no going back. Jake, too, was no longer a part of her life. Their marriage had been nothing more than a hollow shell built on deception, and Sarah knew she deserved better. The consequences of Jake and Emily's actions didn't just affect Sarah. They rippled through the entire family. Parents, siblings, and friends were all caught in the crossfire, forced to choose sides in a family feud that seemed impossible to resolve. The inheritance, the very thing that Jake and Emily had sacrificed everything for, became a curse rather than a blessing, driving a wedge between everyone involved. But through it all, Sarah emerged stronger. She learned that while love and loyalty are important, they can be easily shattered by greed and selfishness. She also discovered her own inner strength, realizing that she didn't need Jake or Emily to define her happiness. In the end, she was able to move forward, wiser and more resilient, knowing that she could survive even the deepest of betrayals. Sarah's story is a powerful reminder of the fragility of trust and the lengths people will go to for money. But it's also a story of resilience and personal growth. Despite everything that had been taken from her, Sarah refused to let the betrayal define her. She learned to rebuild her life on her own terms, and in doing so, she found a sense of peace and strength she never knew she had. So, after hearing Sarah's heartbreaking story, what do you think? Could you ever forgive your husband and sister if they betrayed you like this? Or would you cut them out of your life for good? Let us know in the comments below. I'm sure this one's going to spark some heated opinions. And if you're interested in hearing more crazy real-life stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check out the other videos on my channel. There's no shortage of jaw-dropping tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning everything about love, loyalty, and family ties.